Hey, welcome everybody to our fourth session on the Enneagram, Felt in the Bones. This is the third and final session in which we're going to spend some time going through the different types, the different specific numbers. So, if you want a brief recap, we just talked in general in the first session about what exactly is the Enneagram and how does it help us. And remember, it's really about motivations. And what we're looking for when we describe these types is what resonates with us, what resounds within our soul that describes maybe something that we don't like about ourselves. Maybe it's our favorite thing about ourselves if we're in a really healthy space. But we're spending that time describing what these types are, where their motivations are, what their fears are. And the goal for those of us journeying together is to figure out what resonates with me, what rings true to who I am. As we've talked about in the past, some of us have come into the Enneagram through different inventories, and we have linked those in the past. I personally believe that the best way to really be centered in what our number is, to be centered in the ground from which we move within the Enneagram, which we'll get to next session, is to really find what rings true with us. I'm glad you're with us. If you've been journeying this whole time, I'm very glad. And as always, we'll be putting out some stuff after this ends. I do want to say a little bit about what is different today, and that is I've had something come up, and so this is a pre-recorded session. I didn't want us to miss our time together. I didn't want us to have to delay getting through the Enneagram. And so I hope you will indulge with me, and I hope that we can still have some meaningful conversation. I will leave some space within this. I hope you can communicate with one another in the Zoom chat. I will go back and read that chat. And so hopefully we'll find some space that will wrap up these types and be able next week to talk about, now that we may have an idea of what our type is, what do we do with that? So that said, let's get going. Let's see where we go from here. We're in the third of the centers. We started with the heart, our twos, threes, and fours. We went into the head last week, and that is our fives, sixes, and sevens. And we're going to finish with the body. What exactly do I mean by the body? And why is this session titled Felt in the Bones? If you've been around people who are eights, nines, and ones, which is what we're going to discuss today, you know that they really have strong gut reactions to things. It's a little bit different than the head, where we think about things kind of cool and clinical, and it's a little bit different than the heart, where we really have this need to be loved and to measure up. For those who are eight, nines, and ones who are in their body, it's guttural, it's a growl, it's a real resonance that just sets with them oddly, or strongly, I should say. It's different than the heart, and it is something that is a real gift and sometimes a real burden on those who are our eights, nines, and ones. The thing that really resonates with those eights, nines, and ones is that they just know. Early on, and I think I've talked about this before, I really like to think that I thought before I did, but from a human understanding of how we work in the whole, I actually believe now that my body reacts first. It's just not what I'm in touch with first. Functional MRIs show us that we often have all sorts of micro reactions to stimuli before our frontal lobe and our prefrontal cortex really kicks in to try to control and um, mold that information. It is true that the gut knows. The mind explains it later. Sometimes I like to say that we are justification creatures. We feel things in our bodies, we have reactions, and then we seek to justify them. When we talk about the body center, the eights, nines, and ones, I think one of the best books that kind of explores that, not related to the Enneagram, is Blink by Malcolm Gladwell, one of his earlier works. In that book, he tells a story about, I think it was the Getty Museum in LA, and this priceless antiquity they had found, and they were trying to determine if it was real or not. And everyone who came in and used logic and all the rubrics to figure out if it was real was like, it must be authentic, even though we thought there were no more of these remaining in the world. There were a couple of people, however, who came in, looked at it, and knew in their gut that it was wrong. It was inauthentic. They couldn't explain why, but they just felt it was wrong. Well, by the end of that story, we learned that even though there was no logical explanation for why it was wrong, it was a fake. And so those people who had a gut reaction, their body was telling them something they could not quantify or qualify, and they were correct that it was not authentic. Some of us are more in touch with that, our eights, nines, and one, with that gut energy. Others of us have really had to learn to quiet our minds or to still our hearts so we can feel what our body is feeling. And it is the gift that comes with the eights, nines, and ones. I want you to reflect for a moment on a decision you have made in your life on pure instinct. How did it turn out? I'd love it if you'd share in the chat. Again, I'm going to go back and read that later. But I hope even right now you can just take a few minutes, just like a minute, and share one of those experiences so that you can hear from one another or read from one another. Even if you want to unmute, I'm just going to give you like a minute here to share with one another about how that feels. That's great. I hope you had a chance to share. I look forward to reading through those gut decisions you've made that have worked out well for you. I think a lot of us have had those moments, and maybe even more of them when we were younger, but the older we got, the more we learned that we really had to think through things for whatever reason. So we weren't impulsive. The hard thing is that sometimes our impulsive gut is right, and it's tough to distinguish between those two. A little preview, starting in August, sometime up in August, early September, we're going to do another webinar about how do we integrate, not as specifically Enneagram, but how do we integrate the, the head, the heart, and the body to be fully functioning team members and leaders. And we'll spend a little bit of time talking about that in the next couple of sessions. For our gut center, they are one center, and they are all shaped by the core emotion of anger. Now, anger is a hard word. No one wants to be thought of as an angry person. But I want to offer a little bit different take on that. One of my favorite chapters in any book about writing, the art of writing, is the chapter Write Angry in Zen in the Art of Writing by Ray Bradbury. He says basically, when something really makes you angry, take that passion and turn it into words, turn it into the written language. And that's true. It's easy and dispassionate to write about things removed, but you can feel when someone really feels what they are writing, what they are saying. So, what I want us to do is to really not be afraid of our anger. Because if we're afraid of anger and one of these types resonates with you, then we're going to be in a really stuck place. I think about people who get so angry that they cry. And one of my favorite things that my wife has taught me is that you shouldn't be ashamed of tears. And I agree with that. But there's this phrase that she picked up from a writer and a podcaster named Emily P. Freeman, who says, Tears are magic water. They help you know what's important. I think anger can often serve the same function. And so there's this great kind of paraphrase quote from Richard Rohr that will help us understand what the purpose of anger is. It's not the enemy, it's the energy of the soul that the soul uses to make something right. In the body center, it just flows differently. Eights, nines, and ones feel that, and they all feel it differently, but it's really an important emotion, an important feeling. I think anger often tells us when we see injustice in the world that there is something we're being asked to do about it. It's just what that is that's the tricky part. So let's distance the negative space away from the word anger. Let's take a moment and say, hey, I'm not going to be afraid of my anger. Now, how does that anger show up in our 8, 9, and 1 friends? Well, let's take a look at it. In these different centers, the anger shows up in these 3 different expressions. 8s are sometimes emotionally bulls in china closets. They show up, they express that anger outwardly. They can often come across as bullies in meetings. They are all about power, protection, and direct, immediate action. 9s, it seems like a really big swing, but 9s are repressing that anger. They want to numb it and forget it. They want harmony, even though they have this real anger boiling. We'll talk about that in a second. But they, above all else, want to avoid conflict while really experiencing anger. 1s turn that anger inward. They are people who control anger. They want to fix, maximize, make everything perfect. And so that anger often starts with a lot of self-criticism. And then sometimes that turns to criticism of others. These are the 3 kind of core expressions of anger that are the default of our 8s, 9s, and 1s. But again, one of the reasons we're spending so much time in the Enneagram is to learn how to take what often can feel like something we don't love and turn it into a real gift for the world around us as leaders, team members, humans. So let's get into these types. And I'm just going to start by, this time, a little different. I'm going to tell you the song, and then we're going to go from it. So the first song is We Will Rock You. This is our 8s. You think it's got that boom, boom, ch, boom, boom, ch. It's got that real, like, primal energy. I love that scene in A Knight's Tale when they anachronistically are using that song in a setting from Canterbury Tales, and they're stomping in the stadiums while there's a joust going on. It's just this uproarious kind of energy about, buddy, I'm about to rock your world. You're about to just experience the power of who I am. That is the energy that our 8s bring into. The animal that we use to describe our 8s is the lion. And they really have this externalized roar, this kind of feeling of like, man, I have got to be in charge of what's happening. I want to take control. I must be strong. Weakness can be exploited, and I don't want to be exploited. That's that inner voice that's driving them. Their motivation is to be powerful. If you've been in meetings with 8s, you know they love to be in control. I was working with a guy one time. We were on several committees together, and before I was at this institution, he was known for making people cry in meetings. And we did an Enneagram retreat for everyone to try to help people understand how to better function with one another in meetings. And when we got to him, we started talking about the 8s, and everybody recognized that was him. It made him come off like a real jerk in meetings sometimes. Understanding that he was an 8, he self-disclosed that at the appropriate moment. That resonated with him, and understanding that he was an 8 allowed him to move into that second part of that motivation. He understood that he had this deep desire to be in control. And it wasn't because he thought he was the smartest person or the best person, though sometimes it seemed that way. It's because he wanted to protect those that he loved, whether that's a person or an institution, whether it's people or some sort of ideal. They are protectors, just like a lion is a protector of the pride. They hate being controlled. They hate feeling betrayed or made vulnerable. The shadow of the 8 is that they can come across as intimidators, as bullies. They like to bulldoze their way through things. They don't love to be vulnerable or show the need that they have. This guy, his name was Ken, uh, would do anything for anybody. He would give you the shirt off his back. He would let you drive his brand new car. You wanted to take his motor home for the weekend. That's fine. He loved so fiercely, deep down in his gut. And yet there was a difficulty in translating that sometimes to a space where people could understand. And so that self-awareness really helped him to start to show his own need more. It made him a person who really was able to use the gifts of the 8, which is courage, advocacy, and a real protection of the powerless. It's about understanding where that motivation comes from and stepping into that healthier space. The movie we associate with them, if it's We Will Rock You as the song, then the movie we like to associate with them is Gladiator, all about protecting the weak. This person who came from power then gets put in with the powerless, but instead of looking for his own power, he's transformed throughout that movie to be the one who is the protector of others, even at the cost of his own life, even at the cost of himself. Some examples that we might think of as 8s would be Winston Churchill, Serena Williams, or Martin Luther King Jr., who really wanted to exert their power to benefit those around them. For me personally, I think the anger is easiest to see in the 8s because it is the most externalized anger. And again, anger is not a bad thing. It's a power, it's a motivation, it's a push, it's a feeling. So if that resonates with you, I hope you'll chime in the Zoom chat. I want to see which of y'all who've been in this journey that 8 energy feels like you just know something's wrong, and sometimes it makes you come across the wrong way, but you really care for people so deeply that that's where that motivation is. Chime in the chat and let's see who that is. We shift into that 9 space, we find that they often seem like the least angry of all the numbers. If we were going to give all the Enneagram types a drink, we would have them have pina coladas and Mai Tais. They're often seen as these people who are like, hey, let's just chill. 9s are not necessarily high. They can come across as maybe a little high. Like they're just, hey, man, let's all just get along. What's interesting about 9s, and I've known some beautiful, powerful 9s, is it's not that they're not angry. They just kind of forgot where they put it. Often for 9s, there's something happening really early on in their lives that makes them very conflict averse. And so that anger gets pushed way down and sacrificed for the concept of everybody getting along. Which is what would lead us to understand that their song would be the fantastic Beatles song, Let It Be. Like, if we could just all get along, if we could just let it be, 9s would be very, very happy. The issue is they are gifted to see when things are wrong, to have that anger, but they've sacrificed it for the sake of peacemaking, and there really is a better path for them. We think of the 9s in an animal as the elephant. The elephant seems slow and easy, but when an elephant needs to, it can really act with a lot of force and protect those around it. These 9s, again, and I was teaching kind of an Enneagram 2.0 over with some folks on campus at Tech the other day and talking to a 9, and I asked this question. I said, hey, do you have some sort of early experience, if you don't mind sharing, where there was some sort of cataclysmic traumatic event where there was a breaking of relationship? And this person said, yes, that's exactly right. And that's been true for a lot of 9s. They had something happen that caused a breaking of relationship somewhere early on in their lives, or something even later on that was so traumatic that they came away with this inner voice that is telling them all the time, don't make waves. Peace is worth more than my opinion. They really want to have that inner peace. They want to have harmony and avoid all conflict. That's their chief motivation. They're afraid of loss, of separation, and the destruction of that peace. The shadow of that is that they lose themselves. They merge with others. They can be kind of passive aggressive. They can be self-denigrating because they're willing to shut down beautiful part of who they are as long as people can get along. When nines get healthy, they move into that energy of the elephant that's protecting the elephant pups. I'm not sure what small elephants are called. They become really inclusive. They like to bring the whole group in, but they also become really good at keeping predators away. Natural mediators, a calm presence, but one that is not willing to put up with things that don't belong. A great movie for nines is Forrest Gump. You think about Forrest Gump, he just wanted to get along with everybody. He loses himself in all sorts of relationships. But there are moments in that movie when he begins to really come into himself and that anger bubbles to the surface. Nines have that anger. It's just a trick of learning how to have a healthy relationship with it and learning that being and expressing that anger will not necessarily break relationships. That's a real gift for them that they can hold that anger and yet not break relationship because they are so inclusive and such natural mediators about making sure everybody's voices are heard. It's a real beauty of the nine. Again, let me know if that's something that resonates with you. Put it in the chat. I look forward to seeing how that goes. Ones. Ones, we come to the very end of it. And I'm married to a one, and I love her to the end of the earth. And so I have firsthand experience being with ones. They have the deepest drive to be good, to be correct. Whereas eights, that gets turned externally, where nines, it gets buried. With ones, it really turns inward. They are hypercritical of themselves. They want to be good, but that inner critic voice that's so developed in the ones often can tell them that they're not, even when they are. The song for the ones, Michael Jackson, Man in the Mirror. I'm starting with the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to make a change. It's really hard sometimes for ones to relax because one of the gifts is that they can look at any system, anything going on, and they can go, hey, this could be tweaked, this could be made better, striving towards this kind of perfection. And it's not even that they think it can be attained, it's just that they know things can always be better. So how that works with this song is that they don't typically start with trying to fix things externally, they start with fixing the inside. And that can make them hypercritical of themselves if that's not something they've examined and spent a lot of time working on. The capability to see how things can always be better is a gift. Learning to turn it off is a part of that gift. We think of ones as the reformers and the border collie. If you've ever watched a border collie, it's really hard for them to rest. They're dogs that have a lot of exercise because they are bred to keep things in line, to move around, to make sure the herd doesn't get out of line. There's that energy to the one of like, I've got to make sure everybody's okay. There's no predators, that these animals aren't getting away, because it can always be reworked. It can be tweaked. It can be made better. It's fantastic to have ones in our lives. Just like every number. There are no wrong numbers, right? Everyone has a beautiful gift for the world. For ones, it's so great because you can do something, and you talk about people who are excel at iterative change. It's our ones. They're like, oh, that didn't go quite right. Let's fix it. Let's fix it. Let's fix it. And that is this internal drive that is often turned inward. And the hard thing is that if perfection can't truly be attained, when do you know how to relax? That inner voice is saying, there's a right way. Anything else is unacceptable. And if you cannot accept something, then you have to keep working at it. They want to be good, virtuous, and improve everything. They are afraid of being wrong, morally corrupt, or imperfect. The problem is that when things can't achieve perfection, that can often lead to resentment. They can come across as very rigid, as chronically dissatisfied, real negative Nicks and Nancys. There's a lot of gift to ones, though, and when they can learn to find this balance, when they can learn to own that anger at the way that things are not right and use it to the right degree, they have so much integrity, so many principled actions, so much clarity in that gut space about how things could be better, that often they're very good reformers because, and I know that's their name, but they're very good at reforming systems. Martin Luther, probably a one, with the Great Reformation. They learn to rest in their inherent goodness and still fix the things that are wrong in systems and around them. Uh, I'm kind of biased. I got a one I love very much and has benefited my life. I've seen those gifts, but I've seen the gifts of all these numbers. The movie we would go with for the ones is Schindler's List, a story about this man who saw this deep injustice, saw this thing was wrong, really hard on himself, and yet also corrected the things around him to the best of his ability. Um, Again, ones have this gift, and sometimes it can be very hard because some of the other numbers are like, hey, let's just relax. And ones are like, it's not right yet. Let's keep going. Uh, Nelson Mandela, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Gandhi would be some great examples of ones. Let's talk out of all that. And again, if you resonate with that one, I hope you'll chime in the Zoom. But I want to talk about some of the gifts of being in the body center, period. Now, those eights, nines, and ones, hopefully, when we talk about those, if those resonate with you, you can apply these truths to those specific numbers. But one of the things that ones really have is this somatic knowing. We know our somatic system, this gut instinct, is data. And when we can start to view that anger that we feel in our bones not as something to be afraid of, but as information, then these eights, nines, and ones can act on it, learning when to trust that gut and when to question it. Again, one of the things in our society is that we've often been asked to really emphasize thinking with our head. If you are a gut center or you work with someone who is a body center, listen to your gut and learn to discern when your gut knows more than your mind might at the moment. We can encourage people when we're in meetings with them, instead of just saying, what do you think? We can ask, what do you feel? Like, what's your gut telling you? It's not that we're always going to go with that, but it's starting to acknowledge a different kind of wisdom that comes from our eights, nines, and ones. Eights, nines, and ones are really good at that anger signal to help us figure out what's important. Sometimes that anger comes across really negative, but it doesn't have to be. It can just be a signal of what matters, of what is important. Eights, nines, and ones are going to do very well with strong boundaries, real clarity about who's in control, who yields in a given situation, and what is it going to cost to hold the line. They really flourish with a dialed in clarity on roles. Because for people who are particularly eights, ones, and nines, obsessed with either power or things being correct or making sure everyone gets along, having a clear understanding of what is our organizational chart, what is the structure we're striving for here, that can really help them thrive on a team, or it can help you thrive. And if you are in that 8, 9, and 1 space, ask for that clarity. Finally, eights, nines, and ones make great leaders because you feel it when they walk in a room. Just like they feel in their gut, they fill out a space with their presence. And so there's a real beauty and a gift to those numbers. A little bit shorter session today, but I want to look ahead for just a minute. I want to thank you for trying this out with me. I've never tried a pre-recorded webinar over Zoom before, and it's just how things worked out this time. And yet, we'll see how it goes. I didn't want you to miss out. I hope that anything we didn't feel like we covered, we can pick up next session. Before next time, I want you to notice which shadow type feels uncomfortable to you. What really makes you feel uncomfortable? That's just another way of measuring resonance. It can be back from 2, 3, and 4, from 5, 6, and 7, or from our 8, 9, and 1 that we taught today. I don't want you to fix it. I don't want you to make yourself comfortable with it even. Just look at it, hold it. I'm really excited about what's next. One of the beautiful things about the Enneagram is it's not about behavior, right? It's about motivation. We keep saying that. Our motivations do lead to behaviors, and we're going to talk about that some next time. The Enneagram is a map. It is a chart. It is a way that we navigate the world. And we have a type. We have a number. And these 9 numbers we've spent the last 3 sessions describing is the ground from which we move. And it doesn't change. Once you really understand what your number is, I've never seen it change over time. I know people in their 80s, they've been the same number since they knew what their number was. I know people, all of the teachers of the Enneagram would say your number doesn't change. However, the Enneagram has lines of movement within it. And so next time, we're going to spend some time exploring those lines of movement and wings. Lines of movement are a great way for self-awareness as one of those keys of being a fantastic leader. It's a way that we can understand, are we acting in health or are we acting under stress? So I cannot wait to explore that with you next time, because I know we all have room to grow as we move towards health. As always, I hope you will take a minute to give the feedback. In particular, I would love your feedback on how this worked for you. You can put it in the comments at the very bottom of that survey or just in that first question. It's different, but we adapt. So please scan, take a moment, and then let me know any questions you have or how you felt like this session went. Again, with a little bit of a collapsed time on it. As always, I am happy to journey with you. I want to know any questions you have beyond the survey. Text me, call me, send me an email. I believe in this tool as one for self-awareness and growth. And I hope you're finding it helpful. And if you are, or if you want some one-on-one time about it, reach out. That's why I'm here. I'd be happy to do it. I hope you all have a fantastic Tuesday. Don't forget to register for the next session. That will be in the email you get afterwards. But thank you for your flexibility and for being with us today. And we will see you next week.